Davey D hanging out with you, and before we get into our show, I want to just kind of acknowledge something that I guess the whole world is focused on today. It is the death of former Prime Minister of the UK, Margaret Thatcher. And our President, Barack Obama, described her as a great friend and a great lady and a champion of freedom. And because he did that, I felt it's important that we kind of set the record straight. Anybody who stood against apartheid or ending apartheid is no champion of freedom. And why am I talking about her on the day of her death is because over the world, and especially here in the U.S. over the past 10 and 15 years, we've seen a concerted effort to sanitize people who've done wrong. We've seen that with Ronald Reagan. We're seeing that with people like the Phyllis Schlafly's. We're seeing that with textbooks being rewritten, how they're inserting people like Newt Gingrich and folks who've had really detrimental policies that have impacted people, especially people of color all over the world, are now being made to seem like heroes and sheroes. And so maybe Margaret Thatcher was great to her family, and maybe she trailblazed because she was one of the first female leaders, but she was no freedom fighter. And I want to go on record as a journalist and somebody who was a part of that divestment movement here up at UC Berkeley, and remember very vividly that when there was a call for sanctions, that Margaret Thatcher was calling Nelson Mandela and the African National Congress terrorists. She was somebody who stood against those sanctions, and that should be noted. So she was all about allowing the death of people whose land was taken over, and that's no freedom fighter, and I don't know why Barack Obama, President of the United States, described her as a champion of that when she was anything but. And so I'll conclude by saying that a president who has speechwriters and policymakers and folks that are around him 24/7 is very, very aware and very, very calculated with his words. They just don't say anything, any old thing, because it's political. So let's look what Barack Obama said when Hugo Chavez passed away. He didn't use the word freedom fighter or champion of freedom, even though people all over the world saw that man as that type of individual, somebody who was for the poor, somebody who fought for the freedoms. He didn't describe him as that. And the media didn't describe him as that. They said the word controversial leader, troubled, besieged, all types of negative words. They didn't do that with Margaret Thatcher. They was like, great lady, freedom fighter. So yeah, this freedom fighter had an issue with Asians who were fleeing Vietnam and other war-torn countries. She said that there were a plague on the UK, and she said that they were being swamped with the immigrant virus or something crazy like that. Stop and frisk, that was on her watch. That came under a thing called Operation Swamp in the UK. And then later, Chief Bratton and others picked up on that and started employing stop and frisk in New York. And we could go on and on. The Irish hunger strikes, she let them die and said, well, they didn't want to eat, let them die. So, that was the equivalent to let them eat cake. So, rest in peace, Margaret Thatcher, but you're no freedom fighter, and I just want to go on the record. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. I'm going to play a song from Jasiri X, and I'm going to talk to our guests about the Game Changers Project. Margaret Thatcher, you were a game changer, but in a negative sense. So peace out, and we'll be right back.
Can somebody tell me, what is a game changer?
We changed the game and it will never remain the same. Our claim to fame. We changed the game and it will never remain the same. Our claim to fame. We changed the game and it will never remain the same. Our claim to fame. We changed the game and it will never remain the same. Look, the new definition. Truth representing youth with the best intentions. Shoot through the freshest lenses. Spike Lee in the white tee. This black man will take you to Mars without Nike. I got the recipe laid out in my editing suite. The cure like medicine leads to to the sickness of celebrity, our image is tainted. But you'll see a masterpiece once the vintage is painted. The picture's worth 1,000 words, so we giving a statement from our hearts and souls. So what's written is sacred. Penmanship on the pavement and permanent marker. We the future of media, journalists, authors. I got a story to tell like the late great Notorious Big. Thanking God cause the glorious is, and not shoot with a cannon to blow away your understanding of whatever you think the black man is. We changed the game and it will never remain the same. Our claim to fame. We changed the game and it will never remain the same. Our claim to fame. We changed the game and it will never remain the same. Our claim to fame. We changed the game and it will never remain the same. Our names will reign. We changed the game and it will never remain the same. Our claim to fame. We changed the game and it will never remain the same. Our claim to fame. We changed the game and it will never remain the same. Our names will reign. Our aims to change that restrains our brains. So we frame the pain and we change the game.
And it was a song that was put out not too long ago by Jasiri X. And I wanted to play that because I think it kind of personifies the work and the project that you're a part of with our guest, Shaka Jamal, if you're watching on TV, Cheo Timber, who is no stranger to our show, who is on the my far left and your far right if you're watching. They are in the studio along with Jasiri X, and we want to talk to you about the Game Changers project. And I wanted to play that because you were very deliberate in your song about don't forget about the hood.
Right.
And oftentimes when we talk about the hood, it's the pathologies, it's the criminalization, it's all this negative stuff, but bringing out the best of what we are, you know, for people who come into the hood seems to be what Game Changers is about, bringing these stories to life, bringing the accomplishments of people, and letting folks know that circumstances is no barrier. In fact, we often overcome those circumstances. So I wanted to start off with that. But any one of y'all gentlemen, Cheo or Shaka, maybe you can jump in and really, you know, dovetail off of that whole concept of bringing the hood to life and taking it to another level. Is that an accurate way to describe Game Changers project? Start off with you, Cheo.
Well, Davey, I just want to say thank you for having us on this show. I mean, the work that you're doing is game changing, and you know you've been you're on our short list to do a film about your work. So, the Game Changers project is exactly like you say. It's about indigenous leadership and indigenous stories, and it's about lifting up those stories that the media ignores. And if they don't ignore them, they kind of do revisionist history, kind of like what you're talking about with Margaret Thatcher. So, for me as executive producer of the Game Changers project, it's just an honor to kind of pass the baton to a new generation of storytellers. And it's a national project. We're in 7 cities around the country. Jasiri X is in Pittsburgh. Shaka Jamal is here in Oakland. And last year we produced 30 short films on behalf of over 25 nonprofit organizations, all trying to really lift up a different narrative about black men. And so the work that Jasiri X is doing, I mean, Jasiri's been doing some great work in Pittsburgh and across the world, across the country. So I can pass it over to these brothers here.
Let me just ask you before we jump in.
Sure.
You're very deliberate in saying this is not just a media project. And maybe you can just dovetail off that because that sounds like, it's just a media project. Y'all make nice films. We do the same thing. But it seems a little bit more, and just knowing your background also as a journalist, it goes a lot deeper. So can you kind of build on that?
It is deeper. I mean, for me, and I've talked about this on your show, I mean, having started off here in the Bay, kind of cut my journalistic teeth at the Bay Guardian, which is, has been kind of an independent progressive source for media, so-called alternative media, but really it's about truth-telling. And so for me, being able to be at that on the front lines at the Bay Guardian during the Rodney King crisis, during the LA Rebellion, during all of these things that politicized us as storytellers and activists in the 90s, then going into a corporate setting in New York, working at Time Warner, I was able to see the difference between kind of the corporate media spin and what happens on the ground. And so for me, it was saying, my goal was to say, okay, I can continue to do my work as a journalist. I can be on the front lines and cover these stories, but I'm not enough. We need to be able to have a whole league of what I call, a drop squad, really. That's what we are. We're last year we had 10 fellows. This year we're going to have 10 fellows. Right. And each filmmaker, to me, it's not just about a project where you're producing videos that are entertaining people. That's not my goal. the goal is to catalyze storytellers. So we're looking for people who are already politically conscious, and then folks that also know how to tell a story. And we put those together, and we're filling a void that is missing all across the country. So whether it's Jasiri X talking about Jordan Miles, who's a young black man in Pittsburgh who was brutalized by the cops, or whether it's not Jasiri, but whether it's Shaka here in Oakland telling a story about a young brother, Jesus L., who works for the Warriors and trains kids how to do acrobatic dunking. It's all of these kind of pieces really about black males right now. That's what the Game Changers is focused on. But for me, it's really any underrepresented group in America that aren't getting their stories told. So it's males of color, it's immigrants, it's all of these different communities. And I feel like we're kind of really pushing at the margins because we're a digital platform, we're a digital kind of effort. So all of these films that we produce, they're short documentaries about 6 minutes long, and they stream online on different websites like ebony.com, MSNBC's The Griot, on our website, but mostly through social media. So we did a big piece on Chuck D and his effort to combat homelessness in LA last year. And that was
Occupy Skid Row.
That's right, Occupy Skid Row. So we were down there, we filmed the concert, we interviewed Chuck. And the brother's doing, as you know, he's doing phenomenal work. So to be able to be there, tell that story that the media blacked out, right? But we tell it with professional filmmakers, and then Chuck tweets about it to all of his followers. You tweet about it to all of your followers. We put it on Facebook. It's on our YouTube channel. And after a while, that's where everybody's focused.
Let's even just build off of Chuck D's that video, and maybe if we have a clip, we'll show it in the background for people watching. But that was very important because here's a guy that organizes along with people like General Jeff and who used to be with Rodney and Joe Cooley and a bunch of folks that are down in L.A., and forgive me if I forget everybody's names because there's some key organizations, and they all come together and they bring together all these artists to occupy Skid Row, which is the place that's the largest homeless encampment in the country right now, right?
That's right.
And they do this incredible outdoor concert. They bring attention to it, bring awareness. And then the next thing you know, you got somebody who's trying to make a name for themselves, bashing the whole thing so they can, I bash Chuck D from Public Enemy and get their teeth on that. I'm not even mentioning the guy's name, but a major paper. And I thought it was like, wow, that's what the world got to see. That's when you Googled, and that's what popped up. Like, didn't mention all the artists, none of the organizing. So I bring this up for a couple of reasons. One, just so people can know. But two, both you and me worked in those corporate environments. We both worked at Time Warner, and I worked at Clear Channel. And if you could share with our listeners the type of power and impact and deliberate type of directions that are taken when you have corporate media get behind a story. In this case, it was very deliberate with bashing Chuck. What does that really mean for the world all over when that comes out? That's a $1 million operation.
I don't know how much time we have. I mean, we saw it with Chuck D, and you can help me out with the year of this, but I think it was by the time I get to Arizona,
right,
when that piece hit media, right, all of a sudden, the record label started to fall off, the rotation started to fall off. I mean, they were pushing and still push truth, and push what's really happening. It's the CNN of America, is what Chuck D talked about. But what happens with corporate media is all about dollars. It's all about advertisers. And so I worked at Entertainment Weekly for a number of years, and I saw how basically they have a whole formula around demographics and advertising and what's going to sell on the cover. So when Lauryn Hill blew up, it was a real big debate to put her on the cover because they were like, is Midwest America going to buy this magazine because we have a black woman that looks black? She's dark skinned, she's got locks. She's not Britney Spears. Is this magazine going to sell? And so what happens is the corporate America in media, they just distill truth. It's just they have to slice it up until they can get what's palatable for milquetoast people, basically. Right. And so for me, it became just too frustrating as well for you to say we're a part of this generation where golden age of hip hop was on our backs, and we had to stand up and say we're going to be counted and be about something,
Right.
and not be diluted. And so I think there's a number of us, you saw it, that just kind of got out of that lane and decided to do something different.
Right, and I think the other thing is just it becomes the source of record, corporate speak. That's why I wanted to start off as an accredited journalist with my remarks about Margaret Thatcher, because it will go into Google, and when you go Google, you're going to see my name as a journalist alongside everybody else's rebuttal to the sanitization, and that's what I was getting at, because the important. So like your Game Changers project, to me, starts to become a rebuttal to the hood. You type in hood and Shaka or Jasiri or any of the number of people you're working with start to come up, and it's not just Ray who they demonized, but it's also a whole. We changed definitions, and that counts.
And for me, like the first video I did,
And this is Jasiri for people listening.
that came from that really was inspired by sitting down with Chael and talking about the Game Changers project was Trayvon, and I was very deliberate about. Setting and created a narrative that I felt was the truer narrative. You know what I'm saying? Early on, because feeling like, corporate media and people who had maybe a different take on it would begin to spin the story as Trayvon was the criminal and Zimmerman was the victim and he was defending himself. And so I felt like as a storyteller that I had a responsibility to get out what I felt was that true story. You know what I'm saying? So I was very deliberate about the images that I used and how I told that story to show Trayvon as the one that was the innocent victim. Zimmerman, was the one whose mugshot that we're showing because he had the criminal record and he had those things. And so I think that's what happens. That's the power when, and then that song was then able to cut through kind of corporate media and go viral through social networking and people sharing it. And just like you said, now that narrative's out there, and people can say, okay, well, if you want to know what happened to Trayvon, share this. So it's important for us to have these tools and to be really shown by professionals like yourself, like Chael, how to create those narratives and then how to cut through.
I think an even more powerful story was the one around Jordan Miles.
Right.
And for people who don't know, Jordan Miles was an honor student out of Pittsburgh who actually performed for the First Lady, was walking home and got jumped by police, undercover police, who accused him of being a drug dealer when he was on his way to his grandma's house, no criminal record, and pulled the locks out his hair.
Absolutely.
So now by the time the story gets spun, it's, you can take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, the police, of course, they saying they did everything that they were supposed to do. They said Jordan Miles had a Mountain Dew bottle in his coat, and they thought it was a gun, which he didn't even have a Mountain Dew bottle. And it just like you said, I mean, you see, this young black man in the hood, and automatically, because he's young and black in the hood, something's wrong with him. He's a criminal. He ran from the police. What we found out was the police did not identify themselves, and that, Jordan Miles passes an FBI-administered lie detector test. That we find out that, he doesn't have a Mountain Dew bottle. We find out that, these police officers, basically, they went and they lied, they falsified their police report. They said a neighbor called them and said somebody was loitering, and they put that woman on the stand, and she said, I did not call the police that night. I know Jordan. So all these things come out, and so once again, myself and Paradise were able to then...
Paradise great from Mexico.
Exactly, who helps me with those films and directing the films, and who I actually did a Game Changers documentary on. We were able to tell that the real story, the true story, but unfortunately, what the city of Pittsburgh did was they never prosecuted those officers. In fact, they gave them awards, these three, after they beat Jordan Miles, and then basically we were told that the teachable moment was that when young black men see the police, they shouldn't run.
Well, this is important for two reasons. One was the silence of the White House.
Absolutely.
Because, again, this guy performed for the First Lady.
Yes.
In a city that President frequently visited and said was the most livable city. So that was kind of detrimental. And two, since then, we've seen the word Jump Out Boys actually be persecuted and taken up on in Los Angeles, which is this practice of police in undercover gear jumping out of the cars, not identifying themselves, and acting like criminals, and then chasing folks in and justifying that, which is what they did with Jordan Miles. I bring this up because, a year and a half later, in Pittsburgh, they called them the Jump Out Boys.
Yeah.
These white officers who are martial arts experts. They just fired a rogue gang of cops in L.A. 2 months ago, who were called the Jump Out Boys.
Yeah.
And this is what their claim to fame was, jumping out and shooting black and brown men.
Right.
These are stories that now it's up to us to connect.
Yeah, and it was Jump Out Boys that jumped out in Brooklyn, New York.
Right. And
undercover and shot and killed Kamani Gray in the back, and come to find out they have 5 civil lawsuits.
Right.
Millions of dollars have been paid out because of the criminal things that they've done as officers.
And then let's kind of complete that circle. We have the Jump Out Boys, or the Jump Out Boy activity, with Alan Bluford here in the Bay Area.
Absolutely.
And the officer who shot him is from where? New York City.
Yep.
And why is he here? Because of a checkered past there.
Yeah.
So these are things that we would just want to connect. But again, with people like yourself doing films and videos and documentaries, they show up, and these are available. And so if we're not able to play the songs and things that we mentioned, I would encourage people to go online and look up Jordan Miles and Jasiri X, look up the Trayvon video, and look up Jump Out Boys, and see those things, and then I think we get a deeper appreciation for how powerful those storytellers are. Go ahead, Chael. You wanted to
Well,
say
I wanted to jump in on that, Davey, is just that one thing we've seen with the digital age is that everybody's multitasking. Everybody's got a phone in one hand, a laptop in the other. And what I found with the Game Changers project is that also everybody thinks that they're a filmmaker. The cost of technology has come down, so one of the things I like to say is that everybody with an iPhone is a filmmaker, or at least they think they're a filmmaker,
Right.
but they're not. And so what I know about filmmaking and storytelling is that it's a craft, and that it takes time, it takes technical ability. There's an editing process, there's production. But what we've learned is that if we can bring that level of professionalism to these stories, we're able to get these stories so that they're not just a YouTube story. They're better than anything you're going to see on YouTube. They're network already, and they're our network. And the other thing I wanted to add is just that what we found is that online is a completely different experience. And so because Game Changers is not just a media project, it's a social action project, our offline screenings that we have in cities all around the country, and like we're having here in Oakland on Tuesday, are really a chance for us to take a captive audience and really politicize people and put these concepts and these issues right in front of their face, so that people have to really deal with them and help people to unpack these issues.
Right, Chael, before I go to Shaka, I want to ask you one other thing, putting on the corporate understanding, corporate hat, so to speak. Can you explain to our audience just how much money and research and time and effort is put into developing aesthetics? Forget just the story, but I mean the sound, the look, the feel, those type of things. I know at Clear Channel, a lot of money was spent on getting drops. When you hear the boom, 106 or 107 or 105, I mean, they just don't do it by happenstance. They do research, and they know that when it comes across, it's going to give it a certain type of authority and gravitas, that people will listen to that before they listen to anything else. And so presentation and packaging, a lot of money spent on that. But from your experience with Time Warner, how did you see that? Was that the same thing as well?
It's the same thing. I mean, I think that you're right. There's an inordinate amount of money and demographic research and expenses that are put into what cover is going to sell. And I come from magazine publishing, and I've done some broadcast work. But in magazine publishing, there's all of these focus groups that look at, okay, we have to have a placement on the subway stations, on the magazine racks in the subway stations. And if we have this looking kind of person, I did a lot of writing for Vibe, and I remember clearly when Vibe started to go from when Snoop was on the cover and Tretch was on the cover when it started, to kind of when En Vogue got on the cover. And so all of a sudden it left kind of hip-hop soul, soul music and hip-hop, to R&B and like urban music. Remember that urban term, right? And urban was
deep black and eyes.
Right. Well, black music is black music, but then all of a sudden it's urban music.
Right.
And so you're right. There's this crazy amount of time that comes to just, as I said, just kind of whittle away at what we really want to, the stories that we really want to tell.
Right.
And so that's why this work is so needed.
Shaka Jamal has been in the building with us. You have a couple of compelling stories that you've done. First of all, talk about, add to what we've been discussing with this Game Changers project, and then let's talk a little bit about the projects that you brought to life, especially with somebody like Jesus, who if you would have seen him walk down the street, you go, who the hell is that? You know, it's just a kid from the hood, and then you're watching this and you're like, yo, that's the man, you know.
Well, first of all, give thanks for being here with you. You know, it's an honor to be here with everybody here in the studio. But, you know, the Game Change, specifically talking about what we've been talking about earlier, to add on to that, the Game Changers Project is for young black filmmakers to highlight other black men in their community that are doing something to change the game that normally wouldn't be recognized in mainstream society. That's the foundation of it. And through that, we work to change the perceptions of black men. Not only the outward perceptions of black men coming from people who are not black, but even our own. Because we all watch CNN, we all watch Fox, MSNBC, and in these stations, we are shaped by those perceptions.
Well, let's go back right there, because I think a lot of people say, well, you know, it doesn't bother me. It's just freedom of speech. You know, if the guy smacks a woman on TV 100 times, I won't do it, right? But the research says, yeah, there's a likelihood you will, or at least accept it. But talk about that importance of just us ingesting this stuff and then becoming a part of it, even if it's not intended.
Well, I think it becomes a part of our conscious and our subconscious. Just like when they do tests with the little kids who hold the dolls. One doll is white, one doll is black. The white doll is the good one, the black doll is the bad one. The woman who walks down the street and sees a black man walks to the other side of the street and clutches her purse. Right. Much of this is formed by perceptions of the media. And as we're in a society where we read less and less, we receive our education, our information from what we see on the news and on films and things of that sort. Right. So I think we really have to recognize that we are a society that perceptions are based upon the television and for movies. And when we've been inundated with that from the time when we were born, and we can perceive the radio and the television, that becomes a part of us. And sometimes it begins to be difficult to separate truth from fact, from fiction, from stereotype.
Right. You know, when you talk about this shaping, you know, it's interesting. You have fatigues on. you and Child, you know, a little bit. One thing our Army does is when it goes to war, it takes out the communication. They say it's communication, but they're very deliberate about going to those centers where images are projected, you know. We know that when they went into places like Iraq, they took out the TV stations. We know that, you know, that in Afghanistan they were voicing in, you know, radio signals from the U.S. and all that. And you know, I guess it's, you know, cultural warfare or whatever, but they seem to be very deliberate. And even leading up to the war, if you recall, after 9/11, George Bush made a trip to Hollywood, and next thing you know, we had certain types of films coming out. Yep. So with that in mind, it seems like what you all are doing as filmmakers, and I want to emphasize the word filmmaker, you're doing what many people in the community have often said, oh, I wish the Tyler Perrys of the world and more would do these positive films. So y'all are already doing it.
And we doing it on very minimal budgets, because a lot of it is sparked by the soul and by the spirit that we have to tell stories that normally wouldn't be represented, and so that we can see ourselves in a positive light. You know, because many times you turn on a TV show, you think a young black man is illiterate. He's a criminal with the highly checkered past, and you know that's those people do exist, but it's not the majority. And many of us do not live those lifestyles, or only around people with that type of lifestyle. We are a very diverse type of people with all types of with talent,
right, and intelligence and points of view that I think are important.
One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
It's the 10 Frisk Commandments.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Hands up if you ever seen a handcuff.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Hands up if you ever seen a handcuff. My little man touched me in the heart. We was at the park. Watch him run the rock. Time to go cause it's getting dark. Last play of the game, a hard foul fight starts. I'm peeling out cause I don't want my son to see the night sparks. Before I get 5 feet, the blue lights behind me. Pulling over cool as ice till something reminds me my little man is in the car. That something was him asking me if I was gonna be taken away by them. I laughed like I wasn't concerned, but in the back of my mind I remembered the time that I made a U-turn and got pulled over for suspicious action. My white friend got pulled out so they could ask him what he was doing with me. That incident was one among many. I wanna tell my son that that's silly. He's only 3 and I'm not even sure it's wise or fair to have to teach him to survive before he's 5. That night I read him 10 commandments and I nearly cried, cause it wasn't the Bible, it was from Jasiri's rhymes.
6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 9.
I've never known a time when I wasn't really warned about how blackness is perceived with some malice and some scorn. But mama, I'm sure I didn't do nothing wrong. And then she said that's not the point, I just don't want to see you gone. Growing up, it was me who was questioning the fact that being black, that I was always under some sort of attack. It was the bad kids, the thuggish ones, I will be okay. And that's the same bullshit they used on Kamani Gray. 2013, how is not being white still a crime? And the innocent still get stopped and frisked all the time. I'm American, I thought that came with some sort of rights that was undeniable, whether my skin was dark or light. So much fright, abuse of authoritative might, such a sight to see young folks scared to even fight for their rights. Guess what? We need more voices who are white. Let's unite to put this shit to bed and say goodnight. 10 prison
5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 9.
Driving through New York, I seen him inside my rear view. Lights on, siren sound, pull over, yeah, I hear you. I guess you see 4 black men in an SUV, so you expect we sling. I felt like Ice-T, it was 6 in the morning. He asked where we going, we rollin' to a performance. He asked was I drinking, I told him I don't indulge in the spirits. But he wasn't trying to hear it, he pulled out the breathalyzer like I was the best of liars. But my man Rod D had the Canon 5D. Commandment number 9, yeah, we filmed the police. And because we were recording, we got off with a warning. I asked why he pulled us over with a surprise. He said my lights were off, but it was past sunrise. And I was thankful because none of us died. Stopped and frisked and then why, but at least we survived by the 10 frisk commandments.
6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 9, 9.
Let me reintroduce our guests. We have Cheo Temba in the building. Tayemba in the building. He's the executive director of the project Game Changer, or Game Changing Project. We have Jasiri X out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He's an artist and an activist, among other things. And we have Shaka Jamal, filmmaker and activist as well. Before we went to break, we were just talking off air, and Cheo, you had mentioned Rick Ross. And, maybe we should jump into that, because when we talk about a battle for image and we talk about how that's playing out in real-time scenario, that's happening right now. Rick Ross, the rapper out of Miami, who has captured the imagination of many in some respect, I think he represents all the reasons why you do have a game changer. So you want to jump into that?
I just thought about it just because when I saw that this story kind of had some legs and was running across the internet, and just kind of
let's familiarize people with the story.
So he has this song. What's the song title?
You don't even know.
Right. You don't even know, where he's basically describing rape and just how misogynistic and violent it is, and his whole stance against women. You know how deplorable it is, and then
he's advocating it in the song.
Right, right.
Yeah,
so the song itself is deplorable, right? And how he's advocating this, and then we saw the reaction and the backlash to this from women.
Boycotting Reebok and
exactly,
demanding that there's petitions out. He has had concerts canceled. The whole nine. There's been a lot, but at the same time, what you also see is an industry trying to line up and use their corporate power because he's a moneymaker for them to try and sanitize that. Oh, it's freedom of speech, and there's been rape all since the beginning of time. So why now? All this type of PR talking points to minimize somebody who is marketed to young people day in and day out and has been part of a process to help normalize rape.
To me, the thing, I guess for me, and we can talk about Rick Ross, but it took me back to a time in my career as a journalist when I was interested in covering the CIA's cover-up of the Contra and how they, the whole way that the CIA was complicit in how crack came to this country, particularly how it came to this state and to the Bay Area, and how Freeway Rick Ross, his story and being a part of that. And at the time, I was trying to do an article about this, and I never actually got the article done. I was pitching it to these magazines in New York, Vibe, and these other magazines, and I think The Voice did do something, but I never really got the piece out. And by the time I was ready to get it out, I remember where the Mercury News was running this whole series in San Jose, right? Yes. Right. I went to San Jose State, so I was in San Jose and Oakland at the time when this. In the 80s, when 80s or early 90s, when crack was coming into the Bay Area, and so I had my own intimate stories that I wanted to tell about this, and I think Gary Smith was the reporter. Gary Webb was the reporter for the Mercury News, and basically how slowly New York Times, Washington Post, these other LA Times started to recant his story. Because he came out and he won a Pulitzer Prize. He won, I don't want to get it wrong, but I know he won some accolades for all the reporting he was doing for the Mercury News. But when Maxine Waters was speaking out about this and she was getting no traction, it started with the media. It started with corporate media disavowing Gary Webb.
Right.
And
they went on a witch hunt for him.
Right.
And what they found is that when you look at the stories that they did on him, they couldn't discount what he actually reported as a reporter.
That's right.
They couldn't say this is a lie, that's a lie, so it was character assassination, but it was done so subtly. That's right. And it was like, well, Gary did a good story, but his penmanship was sloppy. Right. So therefore he's messed up, and it was like real superficial stuff, and, so that was...
non-consequential facts that they found, certain things that didn't really matter, right? And so to me, the way that the corporate spin came in and all the powers that be came in and just kind of isolated him and isolated that idea, I'm just looking at this story, right, and how people... The record label or how other people are perceiving Rick Ross, folks that may be on his side. And what this will do, if anything, to his career. I mean, you actually tweeted about, I don't know if you can remember, you tweeted something a couple of days ago about Rick Ross issuing some kind of mea culpa about this.
Let's make sure we're clear. One of the problems with the rapper Rick Ross, since we're talking about media, is that he took the name of the drug dealer, Freeway Ricky Ross, and used his name. So that's confusion one. Yeah. Where people are kind of, in the beginning, you had corporate entities, including many of these big-time media folks that never really brought that out.
But also, too, shaved his head bald and grew a beard. So he didn't just take his name, he also began to try to look like Freeway Ricky Ross, which is not how he looked when he first began to be a rapper.
And I can remember when he first came out, I can't remember which magazine it was. I'm reading, and when the artist is first coming out, they start putting out these little stories about them, so you get to know a little bit about before they got big. And there was this whole story about how he was a big drug dealer, and how he had all this money and he started turning it legit. He started flipping it. Now he owns all these businesses, and now he's the big man in Miami. So I was like, okay, he's got a little bit of skills, and then other things.
That was a lie.
And now, you know,
So we come to find out he was a cop.
He was a correction officer.
He was a correction officer. He was a law enforcement officer for years. That comes out through the smoking gun. Right. And it's like, you know this guy. So I guess the thing that, and I don't know if this is where you were going with Cheo, is just one, to see how journalism has changed, where this became what we saw for the couple of years before it was discovered who he was. You saw a lot of cheerleading and a lot of what I would call now rehashing of press releases versus, let me go and do some research. Now, you contrast that with Paradise and X-Clan when they were coming up, or when Public Enemy was coming up. People went digging. It was like, oh, X-Clan is connected to Sonny Carson, and Sonny Carson's a militant, and they're a member of Black Watch, and there was, you know, all this, like, damn, you don't even cover hip-hop, but you all went and dig deep. True. Then with Chuck D was like, wait a second, y'all are talking about Joanne Chesimard and gave, like, that's Assata Shakur. So you all support,
you guys are anti-American.
Yeah, y'all with Louis Farrakhan, y'all talking about...
You don't support the freedom of America.
Right. And I think for me, it's like, again, how can we, as our own media force, delegitimize a Rick Ross? You know, because on the other side, it's the corporate interest that will they do that all the time. They will cover their interests and cover the back of whoever they need to. And I know we're doing that, but how do we do it to scale?
Well, I think that's what's happening. I think, to me, one of the most powerful statements, you know, made around this, and it was kind of a debate between Rosa Clemente and Talib Kweli, and I thought Rosa Clemente has had the most powerful statement when she declared that Rick Ross was not a part of the hip-hop culture, but she said he was part of the rap industrial complex. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, like that, you know, and that's really what it's become. And so I think the pushback that we saw on Lil Wayne and his
Wayne, who dissed Emmett Till in the rhyme. Yeah,
now the pushback on Rick. I really think this is the beginning of, you know, our community saying that we're going to take back our culture. You know, we're going to take back our image. We're tired of you, just like you said, creating, really, I mean, you know, a fictional dude with a fictional background and trying to put him up in our community to glamorize drug dealing, murder, drug use, and now rape. Like, that we're not going to have any more of that.
You had an interesting experience when you spoke at one of the high schools in the hood here.
Yeah, I spoke at Fremont High School.
And what was the response to Rick Ross there?
It was interesting because, you know, this was ninth grade, a classroom of ninth grade black men. This was actually for the Game Changers video that we did with Cheo. So they both were there, you know, Shaka and Cheo were there. And I asked, what do y'all think of Rick Ross? And all of them was like, oh, man, like, I mean, it was immediate diss of Rick Ross. Like, nah, and none of us feeling Rick Ross.
He didn't even finish the question.
What do you think of Rick? We ain't, you know what I'm saying? So it made me feel, and even Lil Wayne, you know, we ain't. One dude was kind of like, I like him a little bit, but it made me really see, like, you know, we have a real opportunity. And so one of the things I always encourage people to do is, with the same force that we're coming at Rick Ross, with that same force and energy, share Shaka's video, share my video, put up positive images and say because we have an alternative now.
Well, let's even dial back on that. Kathy Cohen, who works for the University of Chicago and is a researcher and actually has done a book on this, did 2 years worth of research and basically talk with young black adults and black teens, and come to find out that a substantial number do not like the corporate images that are projected into the communities. Now, oftentimes we wind up digesting it because there's only one station for hip-hop and R&B in each city. There's only one TV station that beams in images of us, so we take it in and all that. But I bring this up to say that what they found in that research, it was like 80, 90% rejection. So you go to Oakland, and you have ninth graders go, nah, we're not feeling this guy. you know, you already know there's a couple of violations. Cop, you know, steal somebody's name. That's one thing. But the fact that this, you know, that they'll like a whole lot of other things means that they're pretty cognizant of what's going on.
Absolutely.
So you got to wonder, is it because they're being force-fed something and they're like, I don't want this, but you keep giving it to me.
Right. It's interesting that, you know, just like you said, the young people in the hood is rejecting that, but then MTV, with all of this, you know, just like you said, the corporate money, corporate sponsor says, oh, he's one of the hottest rappers.
Right. Send a reporter out, travel on the bus, and they push this. Right. And then you're looking in the hood and folks are like, not really.
Right. And
so then who are they pushing it to? Who would you say they're pushing it to then, Cheo?
Middle America. I mean, I think, again, it comes back to us really understanding, you know, what lane we're in. I think in Oakland and places like Brooklyn and places like, you know, L.A., they're progressive centers. They're crucibles of progressiveness, right? In terms of thought and whatever. But you go to maybe Jackson, Mississippi, or you go to some place in Montana, or, you know, you just go to some of these other places, and a lot of these young kids don't really get it. They don't really so they may buy a Rick Ross wholesale. They may believe his whole hype. But there's something else to me that something that you said earlier just about young people. You know, in America, it's all about individualism. It's all about, you know, I am my own person, and you see this in young teenagers. You know, it's all about trying to reject what somebody wants to give you and be your own self, which is to me why, you know, the internet and that's where everybody is. You know, no one wants to be watching TV, network TV. They're on the internet. And so I think if you know, if we can tap into that and figure out ways to be where they are, and because I think they're already rejecting that other stuff.
And you know, and it's not only Middle America; it's the entire world.
Yeah.
You travel to other places, the perception, those people's perceptions of us may not be what we think it is. True. I've traveled to South Africa and met people who think that, like, our name here is Black Americans are niggas. Yeah. Like, that's it. Like, we're niggas. Like, when we go and apply for a job, there's Caucasian, there's indigenous and Native American, something like that. Nigga is one of those. But they've heard it so much. And then, you know, the censorship is not the same. The words don't mean the same in different places as they do here. So it's people all over the world whose perceptions are being formed and are being molded by what the corporate media is pushing out.
That's what I think it's most dangerous is that internationalizing. And when you look at it in the backdrop of what Malcolm was doing when he was trying to internationalize the struggles here and connect it to the fight against colonialism and independence struggle and all that going on all over the world, that became very dangerous. And when they got rid of him, and then you have Martin Luther King coming up and like, yeah, I'm connecting these struggles international. It was like, again, and I got rid of him. But, you know, the Panthers and others were very deliberate about making these things international struggles. So, you know, there's a time you go to different countries and you see the picture of Huey Newton in the chair. Yep. And you see them with the black raised fist, and that whole sort of thing is what they perceive us. And then over a 20, 30-year period of constant, you know, BET is shown in Beirut. It's shown in, you know, the slums of Kibera in Nairobi, Kenya. You know, it's shown there. And what they see, they don't see you. They don't see a Jasiri or a Cheo or Shaka Jamal. They see the buffoonery that has been corporatized and hyped up. Yeah. And so, the images change. So you go there and it's like, oh, y'all the Real Housewives of Atlanta. Y'all, you are all these things that we seen on network TV without a balance, without anything to fight against it.
Yep.
And I think that speaks to the danger of what I call media mimicry, right? The media they just want to churn it out because it's all based on this capitalistic, you know, model of which is part of America. But so they see something that sells, that's successful, the whole reality, you know, platform. There was a show that got derailed, thankfully. I think it was called All My Baby's Mama, right? And one of our partners, or grant partners, Color of Change, Rashad Robinson, went after them, and got that show taken off before it launched.
This is a guy who had 10 babies' mamas.
Yeah.
And he has herpes.
Homeboy,
Yeah,
what? Homeboy from Atlanta, right?
You're right, from Atlanta.
Yeah, Shorty Low.
And it was going to make that a TV show, and they were trying to say, we're going to show the family dynamics. So you can't show your family and how, y'all are parents and take care of your kids. They can't show that. They got to show 10 baby mamas.
But to me, that's another victory. That was another thing where when the trailer came out, the community, you know what I'm saying, said no. Got on the petition and said no. And so to
hell
me,
no.
Right, hell no. And so to me, like, we experienced victory. These are victories that are happening. I just want us to look at it and say, like, that industry, whether it's BET, Viacom, Clear Channel, is waning. People are turning off the radio, they're turning off the TV, they're going online. We're building communities. We're building, to me, I believe, like a tipping point. And so to me, it's perfect timing to have a project like Game Changers. So it's like, okay, now here's an alternative. So you don't have to just turn off Rick Ross, you can turn on Shaka Jamal. You know what I'm saying? Right. And so to me, that's the importance of it. Like, I feel like we're winning. And I just want to encourage us to keep pushing. Yep. And also, too, when we're on Facebook, this will always, when people, as me as an artist, I always say, if you're not able to buy my record, that's cool. Just share my video. Share me with your friends. Email, Facebook, Twitter. If you just do that, it at least create, you know what I'm saying, some dialogue around these issues. And so if somebody says, well, ain't nothing going on, who's doing something in Oakland, and who's doing something in Pittsburgh, who's doing something in New York City, bam, you can go to Game Changers, here's somebody, and here's the information, connect with them, find them, and you can get involved yourself.
And then you find out, like, hey, you're doing a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah.
We're not isolated on this island. We're not as alone as we thought we was. Because sometimes we could be in our own worlds,
right,
fighting the system, and don't look up. And then we look up, we say, "Oh, I got a brother over here. I got a sister over here. A comrade right here."
Right.
Not only within this country, but like you say, maybe in Africa, Indonesia,
right,
even in Europe. And it's like, okay, there's really something more than what I've been seeing in the mainstream media, but it's really being suppressed. And like you said, this is really the tipping point and the opportunity for us to build on this momentum.
Good point.
And that's really, I could just sit back and let these brothers, really talk about the Game Changers project. And I'm feeling very proud because I feel like the vision that I've had about this is it's multiplying, and it's really not about any one person. So we've had 3 years. This is our third year of the Game Changers project. And if anything else, I want to emphasize that, and this speaks to what Jasiri and Shaka Jamal is saying, is that we need to seize this moment because we can't rely on all of the usual setups anymore, which takes me to the fact that right now we've launched a crowdfunding campaign. So we're on Indiegogo right now, and we're trying to raise $18,000 in 40 days. And whether we reach that mark or not, we're setting a precedent to say enough is enough. We have to fund our own freedom, and we have to move the ball forward downfield. So people can go to Indiegogo, and they can put in the Game Changers project. They can support us financially, but if they can't support us financially, we're looking for in-kind donations, cameras. This is a great boom. We can get a boom mic. We need resources to tell these stories. And so I just feel like it's all coming together. It really is. And so all of these different points that we mentioned, whether it was the Rick Ross piece or any of these pieces, we all have the power to respond to this stuff right now in real time, and then do something offline. Right. And that's the thing that we need to do.
The thing is, as we close, and I appreciate that, we better do it in real time because it's big business. Big business is Black death. And big business is Black pathology, and big business is Black incarceration, and Black exploitation.
Dehumanization.
Right, and the dehumanization of folks. And so as we sit here, and talk about this, there are major companies that are sitting there going, well, I don't want this to my own kids, but these other kids that live in the east side, south side, west side, or whatever respective city, they're disposable. So how can we, wreak havoc on them culturally, financially, spiritually, and every other way? And so this is another arsenal to fight back. Exactly. And having this Game Changers project is, in my opinion, the thing that people have said they wanted. Churches have said, I just wish we had another image. That's here. right now as we speak. You know, I just wish we could see young black men with their pants up. That's here right now. I wish that we could just show somebody doing something positive. That's here. And it's like, 30 films on the site alone that you could just look at and be like, wow, it's right there. And it's professionally done, not shabbily done. These are accomplished professionals, filmmakers that are on par with whoever they put up there and said is dope, and they do it with love. And that comes across more than the money that others are putting in. But it's here, and we should definitely be a part of it. So I want to thank Cheo, I want to thank Jasiri, I want to thank Shaka Jamal, and especially coming off of the successful Oakland International Film Festival, which is another project that needs major props and helping in that fight of rechanging images and doing terrific storytelling. Yeah. This is a great after piece to that project, which went down last week. So a big shout out to them, and big shout out to you, Cheo, and everybody from the Game Changers Project. We'll see you. We're out for now. Peace.
Peace, y'all.
Times, tales from the dark side, evidence of the settlements on my hard drive. Man, I swear my heart died at the end of that car ride. When I saw that checkpoint, welcome to apartheid. Soldiers wear military green at the checkpoint. Automatic guns, that's machine at the checkpoint. Tables not M16s at the checkpoint. Fingers on the trigger, you'll get leaned at the checkpoint. Little children grown adults and teens at the checkpoint. All your papers better be clean at the checkpoint. Gotta put your finger on the screen at the checkpoint and pray that red light turns green at the checkpoint. And Martin Luther King had a dream at the checkpoint. He waved with loud screams from the scenes at the checkpoint. It's Malcolm X by any means at the checkpoint. Imagine if your daily routine was the checkpoint.
And Martin Luther King had a dream at the checkpoint. He waved with loud screams from the scenes at the checkpoint. It's Malcolm X by any means at the checkpoint. Imagine if your daily routine was the checkpoint.
Separation walls that surround in the checkpoint. On top is barbed wire like a crown on the checkpoint. Better have your permits if you found at the checkpoint. Gumming on the tower, aiming down at the checkpoint. Idea is to keep you in fear at the checkpoint. Enter through the cage in the rear of the checkpoint. Feels like prison on the tier at the checkpoint. I'd rather be anywhere but here at this checkpoint. Nelson Mandela wasn't blind to the checkpoint. He stood for free Palestine at a checkpoint. Support BDS, don't give a dime to the checkpoint. This is international crime at the checkpoint. Arabs get treated like dogs at the checkpoint. Cause discrimination is the law at the checkpoint. Criminalized without a cause at the checkpoint. I'm just telling you what I saw at the checkpoint. Soldiers got bad attitudes at the checkpoint. Condescending and real rude at the checkpoint. Don't look them in their eyes when they move at the checkpoint. They might strip a man or woman nude at the checkpoint. Soldiers might blow you out the shoes at the checkpoint. Gas you up and in like the fuse at the checkpoint. Every day you stand to be accused at the checkpoint. Each time your life you can lose at the checkpoint. And Martin Luther King had a dream at the checkpoint. He wake with loud screams from the scenes at the checkpoint. Is Malcolm X by any means at the checkpoint. Imagine if your daily routine was the checkpoint.
And Martin Luther King had a dream at the checkpoint. He wake with loud screams from the scenes at the checkpoint. Is Malcolm X by any means at the checkpoint. Imagine if your daily routine was the checkpoint.
At the airport in Tel Aviv is a checkpoint. They pulled over our taxi at the checkpoint. Passport, visa, ID at the checkpoint. Soldiers going all through my things at the checkpoint. I was high risk security at the checkpoint. Cause of the oppression I see at the checkpoint. Occupation in the 3rd degree at the checkpoint. All the nigga wanna do is leave. Fuck a checkpoint.